all right, I'm realizing that I have to actually be honest here and like tell the full story, because without the full story, this kind of doesn't really make sense, right? So I wanted to like kind of recap. So as my partner has kind of like switched and is 180, I'm starting to talk to my friends, and a lot of them are sharing and reflecting back to me that like, no, throughout the years it's been pretty consistent that like you have had a lot of, you know, uncertainties about having children. And that kind of forces me to kind of reflect and like give my partner some grace of like, yeah, I can kind of understand why he would be confused, right? Because yeah, I definitely like had a lot of concerns about having a mixed race child and not having a partner that would be understanding of that. I had a lot of concerns about where our society was going, and you know, all of the gamut of that. And what I realized in talking with like my friends and in therapy was that not that I didn't want children, is that I really wanted someone to convince me that it would be safe, right? I just really needed to feel like safe, that it was going to be, that I was going to be like supported in that role, right? And I had an inkling I wasn't getting that from my partner, right? So as I did therapy, right, I started to become more open to that. And then basically once we got to a fork in the road where it was like either continue down this no kids path or explore kids, it really kind of forced me to like choose a side essentially and make a decision. And for me, I ultimately could not be okay with a life with like not even exploring that option, right? I had done so much reflection at that point on like what I wanted to my life to look like with my partner, that like I really wanted to have a family, and that was something I wanted to do with him. Unfortunately, I didn't know this whole other side of the story that was going on beneath the surface. So we talked about communication being a constant thing in our relationship that from his side was not consistent, right? I think the example with the kids is just one of many where like there was a lot of gaslighting that happened in this relationship. And I said really early on, me having that mental break was really important to understanding why this was a successful tactic in this relationship. So there was a lot of times where we'd have conversations and arguments, and then the next day he would be like, you never said that, or no, that's not what you said, those were not the words that you used, right? And so that tactic was very effective on me, because I also had this like insecurity about this break in reality that I had when I was in college, right? And like, yeah, like I still had some undertones of that. So there was always this question of like, well, maybe I am misremembering, or maybe I didn't get that right. And so there was a lot of that underlying in our relationship. I mentioned the accountability piece earlier too, and that like if anything was wrong, like he would never really own up to it, and say that like, yeah, I made a mistake, right? Like I don't think that was something that was in his purview. If you called him out on anything, there was always, you know, a lot of cartwheeling as to like why it wasn't his fault. And the accountability was like very difficult to get out of him, to hold him accountable for anything, right? So even for like me asking him to go to therapy over and over again and work on some of his underlying issues, it was always like, well, now I'm nagging him, I'm like, you know, it's not that big of a deal, I'm over exaggerating it, and you know, yeah, he promised he would work on it, so let him work on it on his own time. Okay, well, 3 years is a long time to work on it on your own time and not seeing the action, right? So there's just a lack of like accountability and ownership of like, let me take action now and say like, yes, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, let me rectify this and actually do what I need to do, right? those had been consistent throughout our relationship. And so you're probably like wondering like, well, why did you marry this person? Right? If you saw all these problems. Like I said, like there's two sides to every coin, and like no person is perfect in this world. And there were a lot of good things about him as a partner too, which is why I shared the example of like him showing up for when I had to go to my dad's funeral, right? Like there was a lot of our relationship that felt like that, where he was just very supportive, very like loving and giving, right? But there was also this other piece where there was something missing, and I just needed to accept that that piece was not going to ever be something that he wanted to fulfill, but it was harming me. Yeah, so I'm still trying to struggle with like how to talk about this, but I think the way to talk about it is just to talk about it. So I'll see you in the next video.